Today's show is brought to you by Audible, and right now you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/joined-up. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. Thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a weekly show featuring interviews with fantastic authors sharing their personal stories on how and why they write. There's hints and tips for aspiring writers and great book reviews from top bloggers. Follow us on Twitter at JU Podcast. Right, cue the cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, 'cause it's Joined Up Writing.
Hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 91 and a special NaNoWriMo themed show today. That's National Novel Writing Month, a global free-to-enter competition that runs every November, where you challenge yourself to write at least 50,000 words of a novel. I've completed the challenge in years gone by, but this year I'm deep in the final edits of my novel, Safe Hands, so I'm content to cheer you all on from the sidelines and help as many of you as I can. And with that in mind, I invited friend of the show, collaborator and friend of mine, Maria Smith, onto the show to talk about her experience with NaNoWriMo and to get her practical advice on smashing your nano goals and staying motivated to write at any time of the year. Before that, I wanted to mention a couple of things, including an excellent series of YouTube videos from creative life coach Gabriella Blandi called Write No Matter What, which are part of a wider campaign Gabriella has launched to help writers and creatives overcome fear and procrastination. She's running a free webinar in December and you should subscribe to her YouTube channel to find out more, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, or you can search the hashtag Write No Matter What on YouTube. And you can also follow Gabriella on Twitter at Gabriella Blandi. That's Gabriella Blandy. It was also lovely to hear from Sharon Boothroyd about a charity anthology that features one of my short stories, along with dozens of others from some great writers. It's been selling really well and all proceeds go to a great RSPCA charity. So if you want to help out and read some quality short fiction, take a look at the Pause for Thought anthology, and that's Pause with PAWS, because it's there's a bit of an animal theme going on there with the charity. And that's available now as an ebook on Amazon at the bargain price of $2.99. Again, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Also, one last shout out to all the new followers that have joined the community over the past few weeks and who are already coming up with suggestions and topics for future shows. People like Jacob Rundle on Twitter, who gave me the idea to revisit the topic of critique groups and how they can improve your writing, and I'll be putting something together on that in the coming months. But there's so many areas and ideas I'd love to cover, and that's why I want to hear from you about what you want from the show and the wider Joined Up community. Speaking of which, I've just launched a brand new newsletter and mailing list. It's totally free to sign up and you'll get a free motivational PDF to download, which is 10 tips for surviving NaNoWriMo, the first draft and beyond. In addition to that, members will get other regular exclusive content, more of our 10 tips series, bonus blog posts on writing craft, extra podcasts, and you'll be in the running for future giveaways. And you'll be the first to hear about our upcoming live Q&A sessions. So head to joinedupwriting.co.uk and join the mailing list. If you were part of the old email mailing list or the WordPress list, I'm sorry, but I'm going to need to move everybody over because unfortunately I don't get access to a lot of that information and I can't deliver these downloads and other extra bonus content through that. So sign up to the new mailing list and you can get more information, and follow us on Twitter as well at JU Podcast. Right, enough announcements. Let's get to today's show with Maria Smith. Maria writes dark fiction, urban fantasy and paranormal. Her short fiction has been published in a number of anthologies and her work has been adapted for stage and an award-winning short film. She's passionate about inspiring other writers through her personal blog, her Script Aloud workshops and a soon-to-be-announced non-fiction project she's currently collaborating on with me. She's certainly helped and inspired me over the years, and I know you'll find her practical advice really useful. So let's hear the interview. All right, Maria, thanks a million for joining us on Joined Up Writing podcast. And you are actually the first person that's come to the Joined Up Writing pod cave. So we're actually where I do most of my recording, where I normally speak to people on Skype and stuff. So thanks for coming down.
Yeah, it's lovely in here. Thank you for asking me. Got it very cosy on this cold November morning.
Thanks. All right, so just to start us off, so it's NaNoWriMo 2018 as we speak. And as this goes out, it'll be about roughly halfway through the month, so people will be up to their eyes in NaNoWriMo stuff. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your own NaNoWriMo journey? When did you first do it and how did you get into it?
Okay, so the first time I did NaNoWriMo was way back in 2010. Basically, what it was, I was writing short stories and flash fiction and enjoying myself, and then all of a sudden I thought, I want to write something longer. And I'd got to the new year and this stayed with me, and right the way through I thought to myself, I said, yeah, I'm loving writing these short stories, but wouldn't it be great if I wrote a novel? And then I found out all about NaNoWriMo, what it was about, and I thought, this is my opportunity. I'm going to go for it.
And how did that first one go?
Exhilarating, scary, and also the realisation that I got to write 50,000 words in a month. However, I managed it. I was a NaNoWriMo winner. I wrote over 50,000 words. I think I wrote about 53,000 words. But I didn't actually get an end for my story, which I was slightly disappointed about. But yeah, the whole process of NaNoWriMo, I thought I didn't like it while I was going through it, but actually I loved it and I found out a lot of things about myself.
That's really, really good. And for people, again, the people that don't know, well, hopefully people do know if they're actually halfway through it now, but what about the community and stuff like that? How did you lean on that and what did you get out of that?
Well, back in 2010, I know things were different then to how they are now, but the community at the time was on Twitter, and I think it may have just been starting on Facebook and on other platforms, but I had just started Twitter myself in 2009, and it was absolutely fantastic because we would use the hashtag NaNoWriMo, you would put posts out, you would get feedback. The writing community basically is lovely. Everyone just wants to help each other when NaNoWriMo is on the go. It was great. And I used to do, quite often I would do word sprints with people that, lived on the other side of the world. But we had this common thing that we were all trying to reach the 50k. So we would just go for it.
That's brilliant. And then on the second one, and I think the second one will kind of lead us into talking about one of the first tips that we can talk about is this idea that it's never too late. I mean, as this is going out, this will be going out on the November the 13th, or maybe people are listening to it. It might even be next year, and it's in October, and they're worried about it. But tell us a little bit about what happened on the second time, because you didn't actually plan to do it the second time you did it, did you?
I didn't. I thought, I've done NaNoWriMo now, and I've achieved writing a novel, and now I've got to knuckle down and edit that novel and do something with it and find an ending for it. So I had absolutely no intentions of doing NaNoWriMo the following year, even though it as a writer, it made me feel really good that I'd achieved my goal. So we were at October the 30th, in 2011, and I was sitting with two writer friends in a pub one afternoon, and the friend was going through a bad situation with her writing. She'd been on a writer's course, she'd been told that her work wasn't very good, and I knew this not to be true, and it had really hit her hard. And the upshot of it was, she'd said to me, I even thought about doing NaNoWriMo to see if I actually could write a novel. And I said, you should do it. You should write the novel because you're a good writer. I know you are. And she said, I'm only going to do it if you do it with me. And somehow I just found myself agreeing to doing NaNoWriMo on October the 30th and having no plans, no ideas. And I remember walking away back up to the train station to go home thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I better get myself sorted out. So I started NaNoWriMo on November the 1st with one word in my head, and that was my main character's name as it happened, and I just wrote.
And you did it.
And I did it, and I wrote about 53,000 words again, but this time I was determined that I was going to write the end and I was going to have a proper ending for my novel, because even though what you're writing is all going to be rewriting, it's just mind spew. You still have to know the complete story. For me, I just wanted to get an ending.
You wanted to get to, I mean, and for some people that is important. I mean, it's not necessarily what NaNoWriMo is about, because there are some people before they do it, they think they're going to have a completely finished novel, don't they, at the end of the 30 days. But the reality is most novels, just in terms of word count, unless it's a novella or depending on what the genre is, it's probably going to be a bit longer than 50,000 words anyway when it's finished, isn't it? So, but it's about winning. Winning really is getting that 50,000 words and passing that. But for you, it was quite important because you wanted a sense of how your story finished.
I wanted a sense of how my story finished, and also I'm not very good at finishing things, which I am going to get better about in the next year. But I wanted to write an ending, although I knew that it wasn't going to be the polished ending that I would need to finish the book.
That's good. So that's the first thing then. So it's never too late, regardless of when people are listening to that. Even if they just get 5,000 words written in between now and the end of the month or whatever it is, that's 5,000 words they didn't have. So what about some other tips that we can talk about? So we're halfway through the month now. For some people, it might be getting a bit tricky. They might be getting to, they've passed the honeymoon period. They've done the first 1 or 2 weeks and they thought, this is fine. But now they might be getting to a certain point where they might be slowing down or they might be getting stuck. What have you got any ideas, maybe some tips that people can help them with that?
Yeah, first of all, I'd say some of your best stuff is written when you're not feeling it, so push on. Just keep writing anyway. If you're facing a blank page, start writing a list. Just start writing a list of anything about your character. Bring in a gun, get someone to break a leg, set the house on fire, whatever, but just start writing. You'll soon get bored of just writing and you'll write yourself back into the story.
Absolutely, and it's a good way to find out more about your characters anyway, isn't it? If you, like you say, if you just introduce something wild like a fire or whatever it is, and just see how your character reacts, it can be a good way to tell what your character's made of. Yeah.
I would also say if you fall behind, don't try and do the catch up on the next day, because I think it demotivates you. What you should probably do, and what works for me, is if you do fall behind and say you haven't done your 1,667 words, divide it by how many days you've got left and then try to do that word count instead.
That's a good idea, yeah. And on that topic of target and staying on target, so we've talked about before, I've talked about it loads. I talk about it every other week if I can help it. I talk about Scrivener and the brilliant word count tools and things they've got in there. But NaNoWriMo have got something similar, hasn't it, on the site? So people will be doing their word count. Maybe they'll be writing it down, or they'll be following it in Word or in Scrivener or whatever software they've got. Tell us about why you think it's important to use the tools that's actually on the NaNoWriMo site in the profile.
Well, if you're part of the community, there's quite a few things that are on the NaNoWriMo site now, such as the first one is that you can buddy up with other people. I think that's really important, because if you've got someone at the side of you, or as in the case, even if they do live, a million miles from you, if you can talk to them on social media or through the NaNoWriMo site, then there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of we're all in it together. Let's crack on. There's a competitiveness as well. And it's just very friendly. Everyone wants to be part of the NaNoWriMo social side of things, or they don't want to be part of it at all and they want to get on their own. If they do want to do that, they can do word sprints. The word sprint that I was talking about earlier, I just did myself through Twitter, but now NaNoWriMo has actually got a section on the site where you can do a word sprint through the site.
That's really, really good. Why do you think it's so important to kind of stay on target? Why does it help you stay focused, would you say?
If you're on target, you've got this sense of achievement that you are doing the daily word count. One thing I would say to people is put your words into the actual NaNoWriMo site. Don't wait and put your words in a bulk lot at the end of the week. Put them in each day, and then you'll see the little graphs and the little charts, and that will make you feel good about what you're doing. It's important to know that you're on track and that you're still motivated.
That's good. And on that kind of subject you said about falling behind, obviously in an ideal world, I mean, and Anne actually talked about this before when I spoke to her. She's actually got a friend that takes a load of time off work and manages to just dedicate a time to NaNoWriMo. But most of us live in the real world where you can't do that. So how should people think about planning for real life and adjusting what they do? Maybe because some people will be thinking, well, as long as I do my 1667 every day, I'll be fine. And they might be able to do that, but you and I both know from the jobs that we've got, that's not always possible, is it?
Yes, well, I did have a little bit more time this year before I decided that I was going to do NaNoWriMo. To be honest with you, not a lot, probably about 72 hours. And so what I decided to myself was to have goals other than the 50k words, such as I said to myself, I will try and write 1,800 words on weekdays and 2,000 words at weekends. I'll get up an hour earlier 3 times a week to write, or I will not let NaNoWriMo interfere with other things that I'm doing. So I'm still carrying on my walking and my fitness regime. I also said that I would, plan each week's meals in advance and shop online and get my groceries delivered. So I was trying to make life easy for myself. I also I don't edit. It's tempting, but it just slows you down because it's not about great content, as we said. It's about getting the skeleton done, getting the skeleton down. So there's some of the things that I did beforehand, but I'm always mindful that I've got to be on it. So I'm writing it in, I'm not doing one big stint. I find it really helpful if you break it up and perhaps do a couple of sessions. Now, I know everybody's different, but I work full time, so that I haven't got the luxury of doing very much in the daytime. So I'm doing mine mainly in the morning and in the evenings.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have to sometimes mix it up, don't you? And again, some people might be thinking, well, I can only do my writing if I'm in my special room with my laptop at my table and the time's just right. That doesn't really work for NaNoWriMo, does it?
No, not really. I did some blog posts on my personal blog when I did NaNoWriMo back in 2010 and 2011, and I looked back at them actually before this interview just to see if I had put anything on about where I'd written. And on the 2011 post, I actually put, surprisingly, this time I haven't been here, there and everywhere writing my nano. I've written it all at home. I can't remember that, but this year is not turning out like that. So far, I've written my morning sessions. I actually write from my bed as soon as I get up, and my alternative session, I'm just writing it wherever I happen to be. At the time, so that could be in the car park waiting for I'm going to the cinema and a movie's about to start, or it could be at the tea table.
Yeah, and it's using things like, it might be right, I know that you've done this, I know I definitely have, writing it into your phone and stuff like that, so you might not have your laptop with you all the time, or even writing it by hand and then having to transcribe it, although the only thing with that, I suppose, is that's using up some of your valuable writing time, having to transfer it over to the word processor or whatever.
Well, I do write on my smartphone. I find that actually it's good because even though I am at work all day, something will come to me, or it'll be lunchtime, or I'll be taking a break, having a coffee. I can just write a paragraph or two and then copy and paste it over into Scrivener. I don't have an issue with that. It takes minutes.
So that's a good way to do it, just be a bit more flexible about how you do it. And what about, again, some of this will be about before people even started, but we always get hung up on whether people are pantsters or they're outliners, so whether they fly by the seat of their pants and just go for it, or they want to outline. But some people might start off as one thing. I know that I sort of class myself as a bit of a pantster, but then sometimes you might get stuck halfway through by doing that. So, or vice versa, you might outline, but then you feel like your story needs to go somewhere else. So what about that?
Okay, so I have done 2 novels with no planning whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And this current NaNoWriMo that I'm doing, I have a very strong idea of what I'm doing. I have lots of notes that I had prepared before, ideas of all the scenes. So yes, I have planned it, but I am finding that I am writing completely new ideas into my prose this time.
And why do you think that is? I mean, does it, obviously it doesn't sound like it bothers you. It sounds like you're just going with it anyway.
I am just going with it because I think I'm very calm about it, actually. I think it's because I know from experience that I probably will not be using all of the words that I will write in NaNoWriMo. It's just getting it out there. The whole idea is to get the ideas, get whatever's buried deep within you about this story, get it up onto the page, because when you can see it, when you can read those words after NaNoWriMo has finished, you can say, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Where did that come from? But actually, yes, that's a keeper. I'm going to have that for the story. Or you can just decide, what am I writing? No, that's no good. I'll edit it out. I think the whole idea of NaNoWriMo is not that you're going to come out with a polished novel at the end of it, but you're actually going to find out what the story is.
Yeah, you can unearth it, and it's a good way to do it. I think because when you're just writing and it's not NaNoWriMo, like you say, a lot of people, it can be really tempting to just go back and edit, even if it's yesterday's chapter or scene that you were writing or whatever. But I can't stress enough, you just do not have the time to do that in NaNoWriMo, and I do think it's detrimental. It'll stop your progress, won't it, if you do that?
I agree with you, although I also agree it's very, very, very difficult. And I've spoken to other writers about this who are currently doing NaNoWriMo or who have done it before, and some will read the last paragraph of their work before they start again, and they will be tempted and they'll start to tweak it. I don't do that. I read my previous sentence, and I also leave my work mid-sentence or on a hook, always.
That's a really good tip as well. That's something that we talked about before, yeah. And so, yeah, that's a really good way to do it. And tell us why you do that.
If I leave everything cosy and rounded, I've got nothing to solve the next time I open the project. So I might not actually know what is going to happen, even though I've got this fantastic plan. I've got that situation now where my character is in a dark room. She thinks that someone has left and let himself out, and all of a sudden she can hear some shuffling around and thinks he hasn't left, and she's just shouted out his name, and I've left it there. And I actually think, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know whether it is him in the room. It probably isn't, but I can go away, and while I'm out walking or while I'm at work, I can think about that, and I can get ahead of the game, because I can then think, yeah, I know what's going to happen. And so when I sit down to write again, when I open my laptop, probably in an hour's time, then I know what I'm going to write. I have some idea because my back brain is actually thinking about it while I'm doing something else. Yeah,
that's what's good about it. It's the same as when you read and you read a chapter. If you read a chapter and it just ends, and that particular chapter ends and everything's all absolutely fine or whatever, there's not that same desire to turn to the next page. It's not a page turner, is it? You're not thinking, what's going to, it's that whole thing about when you're reading late at night and you just can't put the book down. Well, if the chapter ended all nicely rounded off, then you probably would. It'd be easier to do that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's very much that. What I would say is, what I have learnt is that if you are a bit stuck, if you do go in there and you're a bit stuck, get your characters talking. Dialogue is a wonderful tool for getting your story moving again. Even if they're talking rubbish for the first page, they will start talking about what's at the heart of the problem, what needs to change, or how they're gonna solve an issue.
That is a really good tip, and it's all words as well. It's all extra words. It's one of these ways that we talk about. And one of the things that we've talked about before, and I've mentioned it in a previous blog post, is this idea of cheating without cheating at Nano. And one of the ways that I talked about is with dialogue, as you say, because you can just start a conversation, and whilst you know that a lot of it's going to get edited down and it's going to be probably much sharper in the finished edit, it's a great way to get extra words and to work through your character problems, and you also get a better sense of the actual characters again, don't you?
You do. I mean, I've got to be honest, the first attempt, my first two attempts at NaNoWriMo, I would say that, I mean, I'm quite a strong writer with dialogue, but I would say that probably narrative was 40%, the dialogue was 60%. I have to say this current NaNoWriMo that I'm doing this year, I am purposely making it so that at least 75% of what I write will be dialogue.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with NaNoWriMo. I know it's called National Novel Writing Month, but people use it for all sorts of things. I was speaking to somebody recently on Twitter, and they're using it to write a collection of short stories. I know some people use poems, although that would be a lot of poems to do 50,000 words, but people can use it for all sorts of different things, can't they?
I think it's a great idea, and why not? Especially as short fiction is now becoming very popular, as our attention spans are getting less and less, and we're looking to read short stories. And even if you only get 50,000 words out of this project, that is, that's a short book. That's good enough. You can probably edit it, end up with 35,000 good words, and you've got yourself a novella.
Absolutely. And what sort of, because some people will just be doing NaNoWriMo, and for some people, this might be just something that they do each year, and they don't really write the rest of the year, and it's just something that they just treat it as like a little creative thing that they do for a month or whatever. But for people that want to carry on writing, they might be quite near the beginning of their writing journey or whatever. How do you think, what sort of habits does it instill in people to carry on writing past November and thinking about this first draft, this idea of writing and finishing that first draft? Because it's the biggest thing with most people. Lots of people start writing a novel, or they might write the first 20, 30, 40, 50,000 words of it, but they still don't finish the first draft. So what lessons do you think they can take going forward? What should they think about after November?
Well, first of all, goal setting. Because they will be setting goals, even if they don't think they're setting goals, they are, because they're getting up every morning or they're going to their keyboards every evening, and they are sitting down and they are trying to achieve the 1,667 words. So they will be learning about goals. The second thing they'll be learning about is habit. I think I've learnt now, is really important in writing. So after NaNoWriMo, if they can still go back to their keyboards in the mornings or the evening or whenever they're writing, and do that 10 minutes a day, or that 50 minutes or an hour and a half, whatever it is that it takes you to write, you don't have to do that many words, but you're getting the habit. The other thing I would say is, if you are new to writing and you really haven't done much writing before, but you've now got this great big tomb of words and you want some help with getting it sorted out, then find a workshop or join a writers group, or get some help with getting a structure of what you need to do to pull it all together and get it into a novel.
Absolutely, yeah. Use it as a springboard, as you say. And one of the other things, you talked earlier about word sprints in different bits and pieces, and you're right there, what you just said, where for some people it's 10 minutes a day, or it's 20 minutes a day, or it's an hour a day, or whatever they've got, it might be longer. But so again, some people think that unless they get like an hour or 2 hours or half a day of like quality writing time, they can't do it. Talk to me a little bit about like the Pomodoro technique, or the idea of focusing and using a timer.
So I actually use a timer. I use a smartphone. I set it for however long I've got. So for example, this morning, when I got up, I knew that I hadn't got the luxury of time. So I set myself up, set my laptop up, didn't think very much about anything else, read the last sentence that I had written, and then pressed the button to write for 30 minutes. And I knew that I was going to sit there. I knew I'd got that time. So I just bashed the keyboard and got something written. The sense of achievement of getting 30 minutes, and for me, that's 500 words, written and done, and knowing that I could go away, do what I needed to do today. I mean, because it is NaNoWriMo, I will be going back to the keyboard to do the rest of my word count. But if that was if it wasn't NaNoWriMo and I had done that, I would be so pleased that I'd got that much writing done. I can't remember the actual figures now, but depending on if you were to write 500 words a day, you would have enough words for a novel definitely before the end of the year, and you'd have something to edit and work on.
Yeah, that's it. It's not thinking about that huge, big figure. And that's one of the other good things that NaNoWriMo does. Obviously, you could look at it and go, it's 50,000 words, but it's 50,000 words over 30 days.
The other thing which somebody said to me, and this was Anne Rainbow from Scrivener Virgin, she said to me, a novel will take you as long as it will take you to write. And that is something that I've held on to. We're not all going to knock a novel out in 3 months, 6 months or a year. But whatever we do helps us to make that journey. So it's about chipping away at it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as we sort of just round things up now, what would you your last thing that you wanted to say, just that final bit of motivation or inspiration for people that are doing NaNoWriMo, just in general terms? How would you sum it up in terms of, so they're pretty much halfway through the month now if they're listening to this as it goes out, but maybe they're listening to it another time of the year. But what should they do now to push on and stay focused on their goal?
I would say just keep writing. Like I said earlier in the podcast, just keep getting your words down on the page. Even if you think you've hit a situation where you can't go on and you can't write anymore, yes, you can. What I keep in my mind is quitters never win and winners never quit. And that's what you need to keep in your mind when you're doing NaNoWriMo. You can get there. Use everything that's available to you. Use all the tools on the NaNoWriMo.org site and buddy up with someone. Get motivated. Stay motivated.
That's excellent. That's brilliant. Well, good luck with the rest of your NaNoWriMo, Maria. I'm sure you'll keep us up to date. And for now, thanks a million. That's great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks again to Maria, and you can follow her on Twitter at Maria A. Smith, where you'll also find details of her blog and be able to follow her nano progress. I'll put all of those links in the show notes over at joinedupwriting.co.uk, and you should also check out the inspirational 10 tips for surviving NaNoWriMo, the first draft and beyond, which Maria contributed to, and don't forget you can get hold of that right now for free by signing up to the mailing list. Again, the link will be in the show notes. So that wraps things up for another week, but don't forget you can find the entire back catalogue of interviews on the website. Make sure you subscribe at Apple Podcasts, that's iTunes to most of us, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever else you get your podcasts to have the show downloaded automatically every week. Also, remember to get in touch with all your writing news, views, questions or comments, and tweet me with where you're listening to the show and why you enjoy the show, and I'll give you a mention in a future programme. One final request is that listeners, new and old, please take a few seconds to leave an iTunes rating and review, regardless of where you are in the world, where you're listening from, but particularly my American listeners. I know from my stats that there are loads of you, but I'm still seriously lacking in ratings and reviews on the US iTunes show page, so that would really help more people to find the show, and it helps me to keep improving things. Next week, we've got New York-based author Julia Kite on the show, but until then, thanks for listening. I'm Wayne Kelly. Happy writing and reading, and I'll see you next time.
Joined up